The sleek diplomatic shuttle pierced Novalex's swirling lavender atmosphere, carrying humanity's hopes for survival. Inside, Ethan Burke gripped his seat, heart racing as the alien world grew larger in the viewscreen. After months of tense negotiations, he was the first human to set foot on this mysterious planet, home to the reclusive but technologically superior Novaxi. Final approach, Ambassador, the pilot announced. Prepare for landing. Ethan took a deep breath, straightening his formal uniform. Earth desperately needed allies against the Voidborn Empire's relentless expansion. The Novaxi, with their advanced energy weapons and faster-than-light drives, could tip the scales, if only they'd agree to help. The shuttle touched down with a gentle thud. As the hatch hissed open, Ethan stepped out into an alien world. The spaceport was a marvel of crystalline architecture, delicate spires stretching towards the pink sky. And there, waiting to greet him, stood his Novaxi counterparts. Ethan's translator implant kicked in as the lead alien spoke. Welcome to Novalex, Ambassador Burke. I am High Counselor Denra. The tall, slender being inclined its head, iridescent scales shimmering. We hope your stay will be illuminating. Thank you, High Counselor, Ethan replied, matching the formal tone. I come seeking friendship between our peoples. Genra's multifaceted eyes studied him. A noble goal. Yet one must ask, why now? Your kind has known of us for decades, content to leave us in isolation. What has changed? Ethan hesitated. Honesty or diplomacy? In the end, he chose truth. We face an existential threat. The Voidborn Empire expands unchecked, conquering or destroying all in their path. Earth stands alone against them, but not for much longer. A ripple of unease passed through the assembled Novaxi. Genra's voice lowered. The Voidborn are known to us, Ambassador. A scourge upon the galaxy. But Novalex has stood apart from such conflicts for millennia. Why should we involve ourselves now? Because isolation is no longer an option, Ethan said firmly. The Voidborn's hunger knows no bounds. If Earth falls, Novalex will surely be next. Genra was silent for a long moment. Finally, she gestured towards the gleaming city beyond. Come, the full council awaits. You may present your case, Ambassador. But I warn you, our ways are not easily changed. As they walked, Ethan marveled at the alien beauty around him. Crystalline buildings seemed to grow organically from the purple soil. Novaxi of various castes went about their business, some eyeing the human with curiosity, others with clear distrust. One figure in particular caught Ethan's eye, a female Novaxi in what appeared to be scientific attire. Unlike the others, her gaze held not suspicion, but open fascination. Their eyes met briefly before she disappeared into the crowd. The council chambers were a cathedral of light and crystal. Ethan stood before the assembled leaders, acutely aware of the weight on his shoulders. Earth's fate, perhaps the fate of the galaxy, rested on his words. Esteemed council, he began, I come before you not just as a representative of Earth, but as a voice for all those who stand against the darkness of the Voidborn. We are not asking you to fight our war. We are asking you to stand with us in defense of life itself. Ethan spoke passionately of the Voidborn atrocities, of worlds reduced to ash, of a hope that a human Novaxi alliance could bring. Some councillors listened intently, others with clear skepticism. As he finished, an older Novaxi leaned forward. Pretty words, human. But what do you offer besides doom and destruction? Novalex has prospered in isolation. Why risk our people, our way of life? Ethan met the alien's gaze steadily. Because there are things worth risking everything for. Freedom. Justice. The right of all sentient beings to exist without fear. I believe the Novaxi understand this, deep down. You've simply forgotten after so long in your crystal towers. A murmur ran through the chamber. Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring. A young Novaxi burst in, panic clear in their multifaceted eyes. Counselors, we've detected a Voidborn scout ship at the edge of our system. The chamber erupted in chaos. Ethan's blood ran cold. The Voidborn were here, far sooner than anyone had predicted. As the council argued, Ethan knew one thing with certainty: the time for words was over. Now, humanity and the Novaxi would have to learn to work together, or face annihilation. The Novaxi capital was in uproar following the detection of the Voidborn scout ship. Ethan found himself thrust into a whirlwind of emergency meetings and strategy sessions. The isolation that had defined Novaxi society for millennia was crumbling in the face of this new threat. "We should destroy the intruder immediately," argued Councillor Vextor, his scales flushing a deep crimson. "Show these Voidborn the price of violating our space." Ethan shook his head. "That would only confirm our position and strength to them. We need to be smarter than that." High Councillor Zenra's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "And what do you propose, Ambassador? You claim to have experience with these invaders." "We observe," Ethan said firmly. "Gather intelligence. Prepare our defenses without revealing our hand. The scout ship is just the beginning. We need to be ready for the full invasion force that's surely coming." The council chamber fell silent, the assembled Novaxi processing this human perspective. It was Syra, the scientist Ethan had noticed earlier, who broke the silence. "The human is right. Rash action now could doom us all." Ethan felt a surge of gratitude towards the Novaxi scientist. As the council reluctantly agreed to a cautious approach, he made a mental note to seek her out later. He needed allies here, and Axira seemed more open-minded than most. Over the following days, Ethan worked tirelessly to integrate human tactical knowledge with Novaxi technology. It was a frustrating process. The Novaxi, for all their advancements, was set in their ways. Centuries of isolation had left them ill-prepared for the realities of interstellar conflict. "No, no, no," Ethan exclaimed, exasperated. He stood before a holographic display of Novalex's orbital defenses. "You can't bunch your ships like that. The Voidborn will tear through them in seconds." The Novaxi commander, Krelvan, bristled. "Our formation is based on sacred geometries passed down for generations. It is perfect." Ethan took a deep breath, reminding himself of the cultural chasm he was trying to bridge. "I understand the importance of tradition, Commander, but the Voidborn don't care about sacred geometries. They care about killing us all. We need to adapt." Before Krelvan could retort, a soft voice interrupted. "Perhaps we could find a middle ground." It was Styra, stepping forward with a determined gleam in her eyes. "What if we maintained the essence of our formations, but modified them based on the humans' tactical insights?" Ethan smiled gratefully at her. "That could work. We're not trying to erase your ways, just evolve them to meet this new threat." Krelvan still looked skeptical, but nodded slowly. "I will consider it." As the meeting dispersed, Ethan approached Syra. "Thank you for the support. It's not easy being the alien around here." Katara's scales shimmered with amusement. "I can imagine. Your presence has caused quite the stir among my people. Many fear change." "And you?" Ethan asked, curious. "I embrace it," she replied simply. "The universe is vast and full of wonders. Isolation has made us stagnant. Perhaps this crisis is also an opportunity." Their conversation was cut short by the blaring of alarms. The Voidborn scout ship was on the move, probing deeper into the Novalex system. As they rushed to the command center, Ethan felt a mix of dread and determination. The real test was about to begin. In the following hours, Ethan watched in awe as the Novaxi showcased their technological prowess. Cloaked sensors tracked the Voidborn ship's every move. Ethereal energy shields shimmered into existence around key installations. It was impressive, but Ethan knew it wouldn't be enough on its own. "We need to think beyond pure defense," he argued before the council. "The Voidborn will keep coming unless we show them we're not worth the cost." High Councillor Zenra frowned. "You propose we take the fight to them, abandoning our homeworld?" Ethan shook his head. "Not abandoning. Protecting. A forward defense. We use your faster-than-light technology to strike at their supply lines, their staging areas. Make them fear us." The council chamber erupted in debate. The very idea of offensive action was anathema to many Novaxi. Yet, as reports of the scout ship's activities grew more alarming, even the most conservative members began to see the wisdom in Ethan's words. As the arguments raged, Ethan felt a light touch on his arm. Zara stood beside him, her voice low. "Your ideas are controversial, but I believe you're right. We cannot hide behind our shields forever." Ethan nodded gratefully. "We're stronger together. Humanity's adaptability, your technology, it's a powerful combination." His multifaceted eyes studied him intently. "You are not what I expected, Ethan Burke. Perhaps there is much our peoples could learn from each other." As their eyes met, Ethan felt a connection forming, one that transcended species. But before he could respond, a deafening explosion rocked the chamber. The Voidborn scout ship had launched its first attack. The cultural clash would have to wait. The time for unity in the face of annihilation had come. The Voidborn scout ship's attack, while ultimately repelled, left a scar across Novalex's pristine landscape. More importantly, it shattered the last vestiges of Novaxi complacency. Ethan found himself working around the clock, finally given the authority to implement human tactics alongside Novaxi technology. Throughout the frantic preparations, Axelera became his constant companion and invaluable ally. Her brilliant scientific mind complemented Ethan's strategic thinking, creating innovations that surprised even the most skeptical Novaxi military leaders. "If we recalibrate the phase variants like this," Axelera murmured, her delicate fingers dancing across a holographic interface, "we can extend the range of our cloaking fields by at least 30%. Ethan grinned, admiring both her intellect and the way her scales shimmered in the low light of the lab. "Brilliant. That'll give our strike teams a huge advantage." As they worked, they talked. Ethan shared stories of Earth, its diverse cultures, sprawling cities, and indomitable spirit. Axelera spoke of Novaxi history, the beauty of their crystalline world, and her own dreams of exploring the stars. "I never understood our isolation," she confided one night, as they took a rare break on a balcony overlooking the capital. "The universe is too vast, too wondrous to hide from." Ethan nodded, gazing up at the alien constellations. "That's what drives us humans, the need to explore, to connect, to understand." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the looming threat of the Voidborn faded away. There was only this connection, this bridge between two vastly different species. The spell was broken by a harsh voice. "Scientist Sira, you forget yourself." They turned to see Krelvon, the Novaxi commander, his scales flushed with anger. "Fraternization with the alien is forbidden. You know this." Our own colors shifting in defiance. "We were discussing tactical improvements, nothing more." Krelvon's multifaceted eyes narrowed. "See that it remains so. The human is here out of necessity, not as a friend." As the commander stalked away, Ethan felt a mix of frustration and sadness. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I didn't mean to cause trouble for you." Axelera's hand brushed his arm, sending a tingle through him. "You have nothing to apologize for. Some of my people are simply afraid of change." Despite Krelvon's warning, Ethan and Sarah found themselves drawn together ever more strongly. Their work provided the perfect excuse as they pushed the boundaries of what was possible with merged human and Novaxi approaches. One breakthrough came in the form of a new weapon system. Axelera had ingeniously combined Novaxi energy manipulation with human-style predictive targeting algorithms. The result was a defense grid that could anticipate and counter Voidborn attack patterns with unprecedented accuracy. As they celebrated their success, the proximity alarms blared. The Voidborn scout ship had returned, this time with friends. "Multiple contacts," a technician shouted, "at least a dozen Voidborn cruisers entering the system." Ethan's blood ran cold. This was it. The invasion had begun in earnest. He turned to Xyra, seeing his own mix of fear and determination mirrored in her alien features. "We knew this was coming," he said, trying to project confidence. "Time to see if all our hard work pays off." As they rushed to the command center, Ethan felt Xyra's hand slip into his. The gesture, so human yet coming from this extraordinary alien, filled him with warmth. Whatever happened next, they would face it together. The command center was a flurry of activity. High Counselor Genra stood at the center, her usual composure strained. "Report," she barked. Ethan stepped forward, assuming the role of tactical advisor without hesitation. "The Voidborn are spreading out, classic encirclement pattern. They'll try to cut off our outer defenses before going for the killing blow." Genra nodded grimly. "What do you recommend, Ambassador?" "We use their aggression against them," Ethan said, calling up a holographic display of the system. "Our improved cloaking fields let us hide a significant portion of the fleet here and here. When they commit to the attack, we hit them from behind." Krelvan, standing nearby, scowled. "A dishonorable tactic." Xyra stepped forward. "With all due respect, Commander, honor means little if we're all dead. The humans' plan is sound." For a tense moment, it seemed the old arguments might resurface. Then Zenra nodded decisively. "Do it. Krelvund, deploy the fleet as the human suggests." As the Novaxi forces moved into position, Ethan felt the weight of two worlds on his shoulders. He turned to Xyra, wanting to say something, to acknowledge the connection that had grown between them. But words failed him. Xyra seemed to understand. Her multifaceted eyes met his, conveying volumes without a sound. Then, in full view of the assembled Novaxi leadership, she leaned in and pressed her forehead to his, a gesture of deep intimacy in her culture. Gasps and murmurs filled the command center. Ethan knew they had just crossed a line, one that could never be uncrossed. But as the first Voidborn ships entered weapons range, he found he didn't care. Two species, once strangers, now stood united against the encroaching darkness, and in that unity, Ethan saw hope for victory, and for a future he had never dared to imagine. The void of space erupted into a dazzling display of destructive energy as the Novaxi fleet engaged the Voidborn invasion force. Ethan watched from the command center, his heart racing as the battle unfolded according to their carefully laid plans. Cloaked units in position, Krelvan reported, a hint of grudging respect in his voice. "Awaiting your command, Ambassador." Ethan nodded, eyes fixed on the holographic display. "Wait for it. Wait. Now, spring the trap." In an instant, the hidden Novaxi ships decloaked behind the Voidborn fleet, unleashing a devastating barrage. The invaders, caught off guard by the unconventional tactic, found themselves caught in a deadly crossfire. "It's working," Xyra exclaimed, her scales shimmering with excitement. "Their formation is breaking apart." But the victory was short-lived. The Voidborn, true to their reputation, adapted quickly. Their ships began to emit a strange, pulsating energy field that seemed to absorb the Novaxi weapons' fire. "Impossible," Krelvan muttered. "They've never shown this capability before." Ethan's mind raced. "They've been studying us, learning our weaknesses. We need to change tactics, fast." As the battle raged on, the situation grew increasingly dire. The Voidborn's new defense rendered much of the Novaxi arsenal ineffective. Casualties mounted as ship after ship fell to the relentless assault. "We're losing too many," High Counselor Zenra said grimly. Perhaps it is time to consider evacuation protocols." The words hung heavy in the air. Evacuation meant abandoning Novalex, the homeworld the Novaxi had cherished for millennia. Ethan saw the pain and fear in the eyes of those around him. "No," he said firmly, "we're not done yet. Thazilera, that experimental phase-shift technology we were working on, could we weaponize it?" Xyra's eyes widened. "Theoretically, yes, but it's untested, highly unstable. The energy requirements alone would be—" "We don't have a choice," Ethan interrupted. It's our only shot at penetrating those new shields. Genera looked between them, then nodded. Do it. Whatever resources you need, they're yours. What followed was a frantic race against time. As the battle raged above, Ethan and Sarah worked tirelessly in the labs below. They pushed the boundaries of science and engineering, merging human intuition with Novaxi precision in ways never before attempted. If we modulate the phase variance like this, Ethan suggested, pointing to a complex equation. Slyra's fingers flew across the interface. Yes, and if we channel it through the main power grid. Hours blurred together. The sounds of battle echoed through the city, a constant reminder of the stakes. Finally, exhausted but triumphant, they emerged with a prototype. It's done, Faxira announced to the weary leaders. But we only have enough power for one shot. If this fails... Ethan placed a hand on her shoulder. It won't fail. Not with your brilliant mind behind it. The moment of truth arrived. The remaining Novaxi fleet formed up around the massive cannon they had jury-rigged with the new technology. Ethan and Sarah stood side by side in the command center, watching as the Voidborn flagship entered optimal firing range. On my mark, Ethan said, his voice steady despite the tension. 3, 2, 1. Fire. A blinding beam of energy lanced out from the Novaxi lines. For a heart-stopping moment, it seemed to do nothing against the Voidborn shields. Then, with a reality-warping shudder, it phased through the defenses and struck true. The Voidborn flagship erupted in a cataclysmic explosion. Cheers erupted throughout the command center as the enemy fleet, suddenly leaderless, fell into disarray. Press the advantage. Krell von roared, for Novalex. As the tide of battle turned, Ethan felt a wave of relief wash over him. They had done it. Against all odds, humans and Novaxi had come together to achieve the impossible. He turned to Exira, wanting to share the moment of triumph, but the joy in her eyes quickly turned to horror. Ethan, look out. Too late, he saw the shimmer of a Voidborn teleportation field. A group of the monstrous invaders materialized in the command center, their writhing, shadow-like forms a stark contrast to the crystalline beauty of Novalex. In the chaos that followed, Ethan found himself face to face with a Voidborn warrior. Its void-black eyes seemed to drink in the light around it as it raised a wickedly barbed weapon. Time slowed. Ethan knew he couldn't dodge in time. He braced for the killing blow, only to have Tyra throw herself in front of him. The Voidborn's weapon struck her instead, her iridescent scales darkening as the alien toxin spread through her system. No, Ethan cried out, catching her as she fell. Around them, the Novaxi security forces engaged the Voidborn intruders in desperate combat. As Syra lay dying in his arms, the full weight of what they stood to lose crashed down upon Ethan. It wasn't just two worlds at stake anymore. It was a future, one where the barriers between species could be broken down, where love could transcend the vast gulfs of space and biology. With tears in his eyes and determination in his heart, Ethan made a silent vow. He would save Ira, save Novalex, and forge a future where such connections were not forbidden, but celebrated. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. And for Ethan, it had just become deeply, irreversibly personal. The aftermath of the Voidborn assault left the Novaxi capital in chaos. As medical teams rushed to treat the wounded, Ethan refused to leave Axira's side. Her condition was critical, the alien toxin ravaging her system in ways the Novaxi healers had never encountered before. There must be something we can do, Ethan pleaded, watching helplessly as Syra's vibrant scales grew increasingly dull. The chief healer, Nilax, shook her head sadly. Our treatments are ineffective against this poison. I'm sorry, Ambassador, but unless we find an antidote soon... Ethan's mind raced. He couldn't lose Axira. Not now, not after everything they'd been through. An idea struck him, desperate and risky, but possibly their only hope. The Voidborn, he said suddenly. Their biology, their weapons, they must have countermeasures for their own toxins. If we could capture one. High Counselor Zenra, who had been quietly observing, stepped forward. A dangerous proposition, Ambassador. The Voidborn are notoriously difficult to take alive. I'll go, Ethan said without hesitation. I know their tactics better than anyone here. Give me a team, and I'll bring back what we need to save Aethera. Krelvon, his earlier animosity seemingly forgotten in the face of their shared ordeal, nodded grimly. I'll accompany you, human. My warriors are at your disposal. As preparations were made for the desperate mission, Ethan spent a moment alone with Thyra. Her multifaceted eyes, usually so bright and curious, were clouded with pain. Hold on, he whispered, pressing his forehead to hers in the Novaxi gesture of intimacy. I'm going to fix this, I promise. With a final glance back, Ethan joined Krelvon and a team of elite Novaxi commandos. They boarded a stealth shuttle, using the cloaking technology Axura had helped perfect to slip past the remnants of the Voidborn fleet. Their target was a damaged Voidborn cruiser limping away from the battle. As they approached, Ethan briefed the team on what to expect. Remember, we need at least one alive, he emphasized. Their medics or scientists are the priority. Watch out for self-destruct mechanisms. They'd rather die than be captured. The boarding action was swift and violent. Ethan found himself fighting side by side with Krelvon, their earlier mistrust replaced by a warrior's respect. The Novaxi's energy weapons and Ethan's human combat techniques proved a lethal combination against the Voidborn defenders. Finally, they cornered their prize, a Voidborn scientist desperately trying to purge data from a console. Ethan tackled the writhing, shadow-like being, using a neural disruptor to subdue it. We got what we came for, he shouted. Fall back to the shuttle. Their escape was harrowing, the Voidborn pursuing relentlessly. But Krelvon's piloting skills and the shuttle's advanced tech saw them safely back to Novalex. Upon their return, Ethan wasted no time. He and the Novaxi scientists began interrogating their captive, using a combination of technology and psychological tactics to extract the information they needed. The hours ticked by agonizingly slowly. Ethan split his time between the lab and Aethera's bedside, watching her condition deteriorate further with each passing moment. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, they had a breakthrough. The Voidborn captive revealed the composition of the antidote, along with other crucial intelligence about their species' vulnerabilities. We've synthesized it, Nilax announced, holding up a vial of shimmering liquid. But Ambassador, there's no guarantee it will work on Novaxi physiology. The risk of rejection is high. Ethan looked at Tessera's pale form, then back at the antidote. We have to try. She'd want us to. The next few hours were the longest of Ethan's life. He watched as the antidote was administered, praying to whatever cosmic forces might be listening. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, Axelera's colors began to brighten. It's working, Nilax said in awe. Her system is fighting back against the toxin. Ethan felt a wave of relief, so profound it nearly brought him to his knees. He grasped Syra's hand, feeling the warmth returning to her scales. As Syra's eyes fluttered open, focusing on Ethan with recognition and affection, cheers erupted throughout the medical bay. It wasn't just a victory against death, it was a symbol of what humans and Novaxi could accomplish together. But their celebration was short-lived. An urgent message from the Defense Command interrupted the moment. Ambassador, counselors, a grim-faced officer reported. Long-range sensors have detected a massive Voidborn fleet entering the system. This isn't just an invasion force. They've committed their entire armada. The weight of the situation settled over the room. They had won the battle, saved Aethera, but the war was far from over. In fact, the true test was only just beginning. Ethan looked around at the assembled Novaxi, then down at Aethera, still weak but alive and fighting. He felt a surge of determination. We've come this far together, he said, his voice carrying throughout the room. Human and Novaxi, against all odds. Now it's time to show the Voidborn what we're truly capable of. As the others nodded in agreement, Ethan knew that the fate of 2 worlds, and perhaps the entire galaxy, would be decided in the coming battle. But looking at Sarah, seeing the trust and affection in her alien eyes, he also knew that they had already won something precious, something worth fighting for with every fiber of their being. The final confrontation loomed, and Ethan Burke, once a simple diplomat, now stood ready to help lead 2 species into the fight of their lives. The Novalex system buzzed with feverish activity as the combined human Novaxi forces prepared for the Voidborn onslaught. Ethan, fully recovered, Sarah at his side, stood before a holographic display of their defensive positions. "We've incorporated everything we've learned," Ethan explained to the assembled leaders. "Solaris phase shift technology, the weaknesses we extracted from our prisoner, it's all been weaponized and distributed throughout the fleet." High Counselor Zenra nodded gravely. "And Earth, what word from your homeworld?" "They're sending everything they can spare," Ethan replied, "but they won't arrive before the Voidborn. We're on our own for the initial assault." As if on cue, alarms blared throughout the command center. The Voidborn armada had entered the system, a vast swarm of darkness blotting out the stars. "By the creators," Krelvon whispered, his usual bravado shaken, "there are thousands of them." Ethan squared his shoulders, projecting a confidence he didn't entirely feel. "Numbers aren't everything. We have the home field advantage, and more importantly, we have something worth fighting for." He glanced at Taxira, who nodded in silent agreement. Their bond, once forbidden, now stood as a symbol of the strength found in unity. "All ships, assume defensive formation Omega," Ethan commanded. "Remember your training. Trust in each other. Today, we fight not just for Novalex or Earth, but for the right of all species to forge their own destiny." The battle that followed would be spoken of for generations to come. Novaxi cruisers, their hulls shimmering with Taxira's improved shields, darted between lumbering Voidborn dreadnoughts. Swarms of fighters engaged in dizzying dogfights, streaks of energy weapons crisscrossing the void. On the planet's surface, Ethan and Sarah coordinated the defense from a mobile command center. Their complementary skills, human adaptability and Novaxi precision, proved invaluable as they countered the Voidborn's ever-shifting tactics. "They're pushing hard on the southern flank," Haxera reported, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. "Diverting reinforcements now." Ethan nodded, studying the overall battle map. "Good. Keep them spread thin. We need to buy time for..." His words were cut off by a massive explosion that rocked their vehicle. Outside, the sky turned an ominous red as the Voidborn launched their planet-side assault. "We need to move," Krelvon shouted, rushing in. "They're targeting command centers." As they evacuated, Ethan caught sight of the devastation spreading across the once pristine Novaxi capital. Crystal spires crumbled under Voidborn energy barrages. The beautiful purple soil was scarred black by drop pods and orbital strikes. For a moment, despair threatened to overwhelm him. How could they possibly stand against such relentless aggression? Then he felt Sarah's hand in his, her touch grounding him. "Together," she said simply, her multifaceted eyes filled with determination. Ethan nodded, drawing strength from their connection. "Together," he echoed. They regrouped at a hardened bunker deep beneath the planet's surface. Reports flooded in from all fronts, victories and losses, heroic last stands, and desperate retreats. Through it all, the human Novaxi alliance held firm. As the battle reached its crescendo, a transmission cut through the chaos. "This is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. We've arrived with reinforcements. Hold the line, Novalex. Help is here." A cheer went up through the command bunker. The tide was turning. With renewed vigor, Ethan and Sarah coordinated a daring counter-offensive. Human ships, arriving at key vector points, caught the Voidborn in a deadly crossfire. Novaxi phase-shift torpedoes, guided by Earth-targeting systems, wreaked havoc on the invaders' fleet. Hour by agonizing hour, they clawed back control of the system. The Voidborn, for the first time in their long history of conquest, found themselves outmatched by the sheer determination and ingenuity of their prey. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of combat, the Voidborn flagship fell to a combined strike led by Krelvan himself. The remaining invaders, their will to fight shattered, fled into the depths of space. As the realization of victory swept through the Ally forces, Ethan pulled Sarah close. Around them, humans and Novaxi alike celebrated, the barriers between species forgotten in the euphoria of survival. "We did it," Ethan breathed, scarcely able to believe it himself. Styra's scales shimmered with joy and relief. "No, Ethan, you did it. You showed us a better way. A future where we stand together against the darkness." In the days that followed, as the work of rebuilding began, Ethan found himself at the center of a profound change. The Novaxi, their isolationist policies shattered by recent events, voted to formally ally with Earth. Cultural exchanges flourished, with humans and Novaxi eager to learn from one another. But perhaps the most significant change came in the form of a simple ceremony. Ethan and Styra, standing before a mixed crowd of both species, formalized their bond in a ritual that blended human and Novaxi traditions. As he looked out at the faces of those gathered, human and alien, yet united in hope for the future, Ethan felt a profound sense of optimism. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger for it. Whatever challenges the galaxy might hold, they would face them together. The story of the human diplomat and the Novaxi scientist who dared to bridge the gap between worlds became legend. It stood as a testament to the power of connection, of looking beyond differences to find common ground. And as the newly united Earth-Novalex alliance took its first steps onto the galactic stage, Ethan and Sarah stood ready to help shape a future where the very concept of alien would someday be nothing more than a distant memory.